Welcome back to Pellets for Politics, a show where we take the complexity out of politics and make it palatable for you. With me, your host, TJ Maslela. Welcome to the show. Today we're going to be discussing business, in particular, black business. So who else other than the Black Business Council? Today we've got the Vice President, Mr. Gregory Mofokeng. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for the invitation.
So, let's start with you. What's your journey? How did you become to the Vice President of the BBC?
Well, it has been a long journey of 24 years for me to become the Vice President of the Black Business Council. I started my journey as a member back home in the Val, Citizen region of Mofokeng. I joined a sector of Mofokeng at the time called NAFB, National African Federated Building Industry, and I was a member running a small construction company with my friends back home, and we got involved in Mofokeng through NAFB, and from that point, we got consumed by the politics of business. And we became very active in the organization, and then I served in the regional structures. And also in the provincial structures, and until I became involved at the national structure of NAFB, which was later renamed Mofokeng Construction. And from there, we then became active in the Black Business Council in the built environment, which is a founding member of the Black Business Council. And I later then got involved within the Black Business Council structures. And through that active participation, I eventually got, elected as the Vice President last year. And so it's been a journey that took me 24 years to get to this point.
When you say 24 years, the number of years and how you look, they're not reconciling. When did you start?
We started very early. We got involved in business at an early stage. So my family, is a family that was involved in business. My dad and my mom used to be in business. So it was natural for me to get into business. So I started quite early. So by the age of, 18, we were already running that construction business. Okay. So that's why there will always be that confusion.
Okay. So BBC, Black Business Council, how did it come about? What do they do? And what are you guys aiming to achieve?
Well, the overarching objective of the Black Business Councils is to ensure that we have an inclusive economy. Our economy at the moment is, the ownership is quite skewed, to their previously advantaged white compatriots. And the role of the BBC is to create an environment that is conducive to transformation as far as the economy is concerned. So our role basically is to make sure that the ownership of the economy is reflective of the demographics of the country.
And how is this being done?
Well, as I said earlier, this is about the politics of business, and so at this highest echelon of organized business, there's a very strong interface with politics. So our role is to lobby government and other stakeholders to make sure that the environment is conducive for this to happen, and that can only happen through legislative instruments and policy instruments. And so that's our role. So we work with government to make sure that we introduce laws and policies that can make this possible.
One of these laws being BEE. We know about that. Are there any others which are either out there or in the pipelines?
Well, there are a plethora of policies that are there, but I think the most significant is BBBEE because everything else flows from there. And one can then also look at things such as the public, procurement policies that are there. PPPFA is one of them. Although we are working again together with government to make sure that it is repealed in favor of the public, procurement act. It is still a bill at the moment. So those are the kind of laws that we will work collaboratively with government to introduce so that the environment can be conducive.
How does the PPPFA, yes, how does that help ensure reach inclusion?
Well, remember that government is the single procurer of goods and services in the country. Okay, so So if you look at the role that government procurement plays in the GDP of the country is quite significant. And so this is the law that government will then utilize to procure goods and services from the private sector. And therefore, you want a situation where government is able to justify, the procurement of these goods and services from black-owned emerging players in the economy. And for you to be able to do that, you need this legislative instrument. So the PPPFA plays that role that says, as government procures, it must do so, to ensure that concurrent to the procurement process, there is transformation happening. So it's quite important that there is a piece of legislation that makes that possible.
Just break it down for our viewers that might not be familiar with PPPFA. Yeah, PPPFA, and also start there.
Yeah. So let's assume a local municipality wants to procure catering services, if we have to make it easier.
Okay.
You will have a lot of catering businesses in that municipality. Some of those businesses will be white owned, some of them will be black owned. But government might take a view at that level to say we want to empower black women who are in the catering industry. This piece of legislation makes it possible for government to say we will be prioritizing this tender for black women. So no one else will get that tender except black women. So this piece of legislation, assists government to do that, number one. Number two, so that's what we call preferencing, right?
Yes.
Number two, it has got to do with the premium that government has to pay, all right, for procuring those goods and services from black players. So ordinarily, you will find that using the same example, there will be a company that is white owned. They will have been in business for a long time. They will be able to procure their inputs at a relatively cheaper price compared to this catering company that is owned by a black woman in that locality. You might find that it is relatively a new company. They might not have established relationships with suppliers. Therefore, they don't enjoy preferential pricing when they procure their inputs materials. So at the end of the day, when you look at the pricing, right, between an established white-owned company and an emerging black woman-owned company, you will find that the white-owned company will always be cheaper, all right? And the black-owned company will always be expensive because they just don't have the kind of relationships that they don't enjoy the discounts from the suppliers and so on. But this piece of legislation then makes it possible for government to justify why they are going to support a black woman owned company, which is more expensive compared to their white counterparts. So this legislation makes that possible. So if you look at it, two anchor principles underpin this legislation. One is preferencing, to say we are going to support black women. The next is to say, when we do so, we are also prepared as government to pay a premium so that we can give those businesses an opportunity to do business and to survive.
And this is basically the principle or the base from which government sometimes pay a premium. Yes, sometimes there are stories of ridiculous things, how people get excited, but that's essentially the principle from which.
Indeed.
Okay.
And I think you made a very good point there that this is not meant to be abused. Okay, so you are not, going to see, or rather, it is not desirable for government to be paying 200%, 300%, 400% more for those goods and services. So the premium that the state is supposed to be paying is supposed to be reasonable, and not some of the ridiculous examples we've seen.
What figure would you put on reasonable?
Well, if you look at how the legislation is structured, in fact, the premium is supposed to be 20%.
Okay.
That is a premium that government is supposed to be paying. That's how the legislation is structured at the moment.
So policy correct. It's implementation. That's a bit.
It's the implementation, as always, is a problem in this country.
Okay. So now, yes, we've acknowledged that implementation has been a problem, but how would you say it has it been a complete failure? Has it been not as good as it could have been? Or how would you rank or rate the implementation this far?
When it comes to BBBEE has registered successes. I think the disappointment is that the successes have not touched the majority of our people. And so I think that is very important. All right, you can look at a lot of data points that can confirm that, and I think the problem is because we are living in a country that has got this high unemployment and poverty. People just feel that this policy instrument has not benefited all of us, and that is why the accusation will always be that there is a select few that are politically connected that continue to benefit from BEE. But if you look at BEE broadly, you will then, see that actually the benefit has been quite broad-based. The issue is how do you then communicate that message to people? For instance, a simple thing such as Employment Equity Act, that is an empowerment legislation. And if you look at a lot of people that in corporates or even in government, have been able to have upward mobility, in their jobs to higher positions, it's because of the legislation. And those people are beneficiaries of BEE. But because of how BEE is being characterized, they are now looked at as people who are saying, no, we can't associate ourselves with this legislation because there's something wrong with this legislation, because there's corruption being linked to this legislation. But BEE, in all its facets, you will see that it does not only, focus on tenders or focus on buying shares in big corporates. It has got a lot of other elements which are very important and which continue to benefit people. What we have to do is to make sure that we broaden the beneficiary base.
So, would assume one of the big issues with implementation has been capacity. That government just struggles to do it. When it comes to PPP, public-private partnerships, what is the BBC stance and position towards this?
Well, we encourage those because, they are a means of ensuring that we crowd in private sector investment, okay, insofar as public sector opportunities are concerned. So whether you're talking roads through SANRAL, whether you're talking office accommodation through various means that government uses to invite private sector to build offices, head office, for various departments and municipalities and so on. So we do welcome, PPPs because they do crowd in private sector investment. But most importantly, we are concerned that the benefit, to black business in particular is not, significant enough. And that's where the issue of access to capital comes in. Because remember, if you're going to participate in a PPP arrangement, you need to mobilize capital, for you to be accommodated. At the moment, most of our, black companies participate, but at a very insignificant level because they are brought on board merely as BEE players to tick the box. But we want that to change. We want black companies to lead those, consortiums. But in doing so, they need to be supported because they don't have a strong balance sheet themselves. And so our concern at the moment is how do we then make that support available, so that we can then talk to financial services companies to say, let's start supporting black businesses so that they can start playing a leading role in these arrangements. Because 30 years on, you can't talk about lack of competency. I think we must just kill that. There are a lot of black people who are running good businesses. There are a lot of black senior people in corporate as well as in the public sector. These are competent people. What they do need is support. And one of the biggest stumbling blocks has been access to finance. And so when government speaks about, amending the Regulation 28 of the Pensions Fund Act, we welcome that because then it then unlocks further funding from the pension funds to be crowded into, for instance, public infrastructure projects. And that's where we're saying we need to see more collaboration so that black people can access that funding and then start playing a meaningful role in the implementation of these PPPs.
So Regulation 28 would assist pension funds and, basically assist pension funds navigate those what's this thing called again? Basically, the allocation that they have, it gives them more freedom.
Exactly. So it increases the allocation towards infrastructure projects. It has always been there, but at a very low base.
What was the base?
I think around 5%. So now that must now be significantly increased to about 30%. So that increase in allocation will obviously drive, demand for projects, because now pension funds must now allocate towards this infrastructure project.
And it should be local.
It should be local, of course. We have quite a vast pool of pension funds in this country. So, we are well positioned to fund those projects utilizing local, managed funds.
Okay. So that's from the pension funds and the private sector. From the government, we have a number of institutions, your CFA, NEF, CFA. What has a challenge been from black businesses with those institutions?
So let me answer this in two ways. The first way is to say, when it comes to what we are talking about now, the triple Ps, you are actually looking at the bigger DFIs that have got more firepower, such as the IDC, such as DBSA, PIC, and so on. And so we've seen them support some of the black players, but we think there can be more support provided. Okay. So it's not that they have not done anything. Something has been done, but we need to see more and more of black players being given that support. Number one. And number two, one of the issues that the guys need to look at is that, we need to now start supporting pure black owned businesses, because I think the tendency up until now has been to say, bring your white partner. Okay, so when you are partnering with white people, then we think that you can do the job. But I think, as I said earlier, the issue of competency we've dealt with. There are a lot of competent black people in this country who can competently run businesses. All right, so we want to see more support on that side. Where we're experiencing challenges, and this is an issue that we continue to engage government in, is with your smaller TFIs, your NEFs, your CFAs, and so on. And that's where we find the challenge, because we just don't believe that we are funding those institutions sufficiently to support, especially black SMMEs on the other side. And I think, this is a conversation that we're having, and I'm hoping that we're going to find each other with government on this, because we have a challenge of unemployment, specifically youth unemployment. And so we cannot do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. As you know, that's called madness. Now, we need to look at how can we then redirect resources so that we can encourage more youth to come into business and experiment. And I'll tell you my personal view about it, is that, as a country, we need to take risk on our youth. No one else is going to do that. All right. So we should be able to say, as a country, that we will allocate so much funding towards our youth on an annual basis. Allow them to experiment. If they fail, they fail. All right. Those who succeed will succeed and create more jobs for others. All right. And take a view in terms of what kind of knock are we able to take as a country out of this experiment of trying to support our youth. So if we're saying as a country we're going to dedicate 20 billion rands on an annual basis to fund youth-owned businesses, whether startups or those that are now on a growth trajectory, we must take that view. If we say, fine, we understand that 50% of those will fail, i.e. we will lose 10 billion rands, it's okay, because we have afforded our youth an opportunity to experiment. We're probably the only country that does not allow our youth to experiment freely, fail, and then come back.
Okay. So basically in that, those 50%, they would in the long run be able to supplement and cover what was lost that side.
Exactly.
Because we would have built the...
Exactly. They will have been running sustainable businesses that will create jobs for you, and they will also contribute towards GDP. They will contribute towards your tax base. So you'll recover that money.
Okay. So that's a bit easier to digest and support when we know that the money is coming from government. In our personal capacity, when it's you and I, when it's whether you have a plumbing problem or you want to build, how does one encourage citizens to trust black people more? Because there is a reputation, which we're talking about, sharp there's capacity now, but there's still a reputation issue or perception that black businesses can't do this, you can't rely, they're going to run away. How do we, one, deal with that? and build that?
First and foremost, I want to say to you that that problem is not unique to black business, by the way.
Yes.
All right.
100%.
It does happen with white-owned businesses as well.
Yeah.
But we seem to be stuck, right, with the fact that it only applies to black-owned businesses, which is not the case. Yeah. So our plea is that let's treat all business equally. All right. But more specifically, let us make an effort even in our own individual capacities to support black businesses, because the whole idea of supporting black businesses is that we need to make sure that we transform the economy, number one, but then number two, we are able to give a lot of our people an opportunity to play in the economy, right? We've never had an opportunity to play a meaningful role in the economy, but it is up to us, right, as black people, first and foremost, to give each other an opportunity. Yes, you'll be disappointed with one or two companies, but that is not the reason enough for you to stop supporting black business altogether, because when you are disappointed with a white-owned business, you still go and support another white-owned business. So it doesn't make sense that you are able to give another white-owned business an opportunity, yet you immediately close the door on the support of black-owned businesses because just one or two disappointed you.
Okay. So let's say we have Mbali there, entrepreneur, has great ideas, wants to get involved. How does she get involved with BBC?
Well, there are many ways in which you can be part and parcel of the BBC ecosystem. The first is that we have associations that are members of the BBC, because the BBC is a confederation, right? So we have associations that affiliate to the BBC. And the easiest way for entrepreneurs, especially, newly established companies, is to join one of these associations so that you can then be able to be serviced at that level. But by virtue of being a member of that association, you are a member of the BBC, because the BBC represents the entire universe of black business. So, for instance, I come from the construction industry. So we've got something called the Black Business Council in the built environment. So if you want to start a business in the construction industry value chain, you can join the BBCBE. Right, we've got guys who are in the mining sector who are doing core mining and services into the mining industry. The Junior Mining Council is the name of the organization. You can join there because it's easier for you to join there and it's cheaper, by the way. To join at that level. So the work that we do as the Black Business Council actually covers all these sectors, and we support our member associations that are organizing in the various sectors of the economy. So at the end of the day, you can join there, become an active member there, and by virtue of being a member there, you are a member of the BBC. Alternatively, if you already have a business that has been running and sustainable but is still an SMME, you can come directly to the BBC, and we do have a membership category of SMMEs, or you can join as a corporate. Right, so you can come in and join as a corporate and be a member in good standing and contribute towards the good work that the BBC continues to do. And by the way, another unique characteristic of the BBC is that we don't only represent black businesses, we also represent black professionals as well. So if you look at the BBC, I'm the vice president for business, right? So all the members who are in the business, sector, I look after those. We have a vice president for professionals. So she looks after all the professionals. So i.e. the guys who will come in as members of the Black Management Forum, because these are typically managers in both the public and the private sector. Those are our professionals. So she will look after them. In fact, she is from ABASA, which is the black accountants. So those black accountants ply their trade in both public and the private sector as well, as managers, as accountants, as, chartered accountants and so on. So she looks after those. Black Lawyers Association is one of them. So lawyers who are both active in the public and the private sector as well. We consider all of those professionals, right? And we have a vice president who looks after them. So we have a dual mandate of looking after business as well as professionals in the BBC.
So, okay. Understand that we are pushing for inclusion of blacks. Now, when it comes to whites, they're historically advantaged. Would you say that are they holding back from transforming? Do they want to transform? Do they need to be forced to? Are they willing to do it willingly? what's the attitude that you guys as the BBC have experienced from?
No, they're not willing to do it willingly. In fact, having a law is an anomaly because the BBBEE Act is a law that then says this is how we need to act. So this is what I call social engineering. Okay, so we have a law that says this is how you need to behave in terms of ensuring that you transform the economy. Right? It's an anomaly. Under normal circumstances, after 1994, what white business was supposed to say was that, look, guys, you now have political power. We must now give you access to the economy. We are willing to open the doors so that you can come in droves, own shares in the economy, and also make sure that black people play a prominent role in the management of these businesses. That is what normal people are supposed to be doing. But in South Africa, because there was no willingness, that's why we then discovered a need to introduce a law that says open the economy. And as you open it, do it in this manner so that black people can come in and participate. Right? So that's the problem that you have. Okay? So if there was willingness, there was no need to have legislation. Absolutely. There was just no need to have that piece of legislation. You have that piece of legislation because there is no willingness to transform.
Okay. All right. No, thank you. So for your guys' benefit, we're going to put the website here for the Federation and then all the other partners, associates, so that you can join. But thank you for coming through. We'll definitely reach out again when there are developments to touch on the different aspects and to see how we can contribute towards moving forward collectively.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
Guys, tune in next week. Don't forget to share, subscribe, like, follow, and see you.